Hey, good afternoon, Galleon. This is Mayor Tom O'Leary. This afternoon we have the great pleasure and honor of having State Representative Bill Reineke join us as we try to inform Galleon area voters and live stream viewers of the choices we have in the primary. I think anyone who is going to vote in this primary is aware of the Senate race, and very happy to have Mr. Reineke here to talk about his goal of representing us in the Ohio Senate. For people who don't know, Bill has represented Seneca County and the area north of here over the last 8 years?
That's six.
Over the last 6 years. And with this opening up in the Senate seat, Bill's decided to run. We were talking a little bit before we got started about the difference. I started in public service or in politics in my 20s, and it turns out that Bill, you were how old when you first ran for state rep?
Do I have to say it out loud?
Yeah,
59.
59. There you go. So, I think anybody in this area is pulled up behind, knows the name because they pulled up behind a car that's got a Reineke license plate or a sticker on it. So your family business is automobile dealership, and
Yes.
So-
I grew up in, first of all, thank you for having me here today.
Yeah,
I appreciate
sure.
it. Hi, Galleon.
Yeah.
I grew up in Fostoria, Ohio, and then I've lived in Tiffin the last 36 years as of last week. And I got started in politics by being heavily involved in our chamber work as the chamber president 3 times, and I liked the economic development end. And I got a little frustrated with some things that were happening, and we had an issue come up with our state rep on paperwork, and I thought, I'm gonna do that. So I jumped in, and my first race was a write-in, and for a primary.
Yeah.
And I won that race and went on to win the general. So I'm in the middle of my 3rd state rep term, and then with Senator Burke being term limited, I'm looking forward to representing the citizens of the 26th district as the next state senator.
Yeah, it's kind of, for me, it's interesting that seems like about half the people who run for office or decide I'm going to go do that, it fits them half is just a term, it suits them well and they love it. And there are other people, it's like the second meeting they're at, like, why did I do this to myself? So what's been your experience?
Has it really
been energizing and whatnot?
It's been energizing. I have thoroughly enjoyed it.
Right.
I guess I'm a little bit surprised that I've enjoyed it so much, but I just feel like I've been able to get some things accomplished. Probably the biggest thing is just bringing focus and attention to Tiffin, Seneca County, and Sandusky County. I feel like we're, where are you even located? Well, 100 miles north of Columbus, and we're just as important as the other parts of the state. So I believe that we've been able to coalesce together and kind of get everybody organized through myself, through Senator Burke, all of our local office officials with an agenda.
Right. Yeah, we, myself and one of my co-workers went up to Fostoria, it seems like a month and a half ago, to meet with their development officials. And Fostoria is really a town that's changed a lot. Some people in Galleon may not like this comparison, but I think it's apt, in that Fostoria and Galleon seem a lot alike. We're both sister cities in the sense that we're not the county seat, and we're both old industrial towns. And I think Fostoria might be a little bit further along in the, if you will, the renaissance of retooling their industry and attracting new industries. So
I think a lot of people think of Fostoria and they think of Galleon as has-been cities, and so I've always been very proud to say I'm from Fostoria. My parents raised 10 kids there. We all went through the school system. I always say I'm from Fostoria. The opportunity that we have in all of these communities, and they all kind of mirror each other, is that the failures of not the failures, but like the recessions and the manufacturing issues that we've had, we're going to grow from those. We're going to be able to repurpose our manufacturing plants, which we're doing, and we're going to be able to retrain our workforce, be it young kids coming up through the system or our adult workforce and get them repositioned. So I think it's been that's kind of my personal challenge, is making sure that we can get this done up here, and reassuring people that we live in a great place and
Right.
we've got opportunity.
You know, it's funny that I say this, and I think it's true of both your hometown and my hometown, is how unionized they both used to be, and how when you look at particularly Galleon, the school and the city are the only two employers that are union employers, and this used to be a trade union area early on in the 80s and 90s when you were trying to do industrial development. You were in business in those years. That union title or union impression hung over us a little bit like a cloud. It strikes me now when we're doing industrial development in our region that it's not it's not even a factor anymore.
Well,
so
the big challenge is keeping with the our entrepreneurial communities, because people working together can get a lot of this stuff done. So if you have one manufacturer who buys another plant, and then he can make some things happen. You were talking about the economic development, Renee Smith. And,
yeah, sure.
That group over there, they're doing a very good job. They got a very good, bold group of people. I've always said Fostoria's got an A rating as far as their board members for their economic development and dealing with B and C resources. So, and you have to look at all those communities, because it takes the people to put those together.
Yeah, she said the day we were up there, she had 30-some members at her board meeting. That sort of blew me away. I kind of hung my head for a second. It says a lot about the community. The other thing I want to say before we get off of Fostoria is that they have, when you talk about the people who are leading the effort there, they have the old families, if you will, are still there, still invested in the community, and that's really, I know that makes a difference in Fostoria's retooling and their recognition that they can do things going forward. So it's kind of neat. But anyways, without getting too far off it, because neither Galleon or Fostoria are the county seat, the way we've developed over the years and the way we approach county and I think to a certain extent state government are similar. Fostoria has always had an abundance of Congress members, and they've got generally more state reps and state senators than many communities, and I think they do a good job of reaching out to all of them rather than saying, well, no one represents us.
Well, and we used to think that was a impediment to success, but now I look at it when I'm involved, and they get the Fostorias in 3 counties, and they get each of their 3 state reps, and then there's 2 state senators, and the same thing can be said with Bellevue with 4 counties, and kind of the same situation, that there's a little bit more reinforcement there.
Yeah, we're not quite as clear an example of that, but you're absolutely right. Fostoria and Bellevue, real similar at the edge of the counties, and the local people have gotten smart just in what you said, as far as instead of being no one's rep, then they've got everybody that can buy into their issues or their opportunities. So, the couple 3 items that I want to spend a minute or two talking about while we have time. Our experience, I'll try to tell this a quick story. We had 7 years, the 7th year I've been mayor, so it's been most of Senator Burke's tenure in the Ohio Senate. Our council president, who you probably met, Carl Watt, knew Dave from his years as county commissioner, so he invited Senator Burke over here. We were real excited about it, and I guess I'll own it. It was probably my approach to introducing myself to him, but I asked him a couple questions about local government funding, and it didn't go real well. That's okay. But quite honestly, I've not seen Dave Burke in Galleon, or very few times in Crawford County. So I know he comes to some of the political dinners, and so it's not like I'm at every event. But his absence has been pretty conspicuous. And so one of the things that I think is important for for me, and I think for Crawford County and Gallion area people, is a sense of, well, and I think we're spoiled. I mean, in the 40 years I've been around, we had Senator Pfeiffer, and if you didn't know him, then you hadn't paid enough dues politically, so you had to get a hold of Paul. And then we had also benefited by having, I don't know, 8 years it seems like, of Karen Gilmore. And it's just a different level of engagement. Karen was always engaged quite a bit. And so I guess we weren't used to the last 8 years. So how do we, that's, I think, gonna be important in Crawford County in this race, how visible, how much state senator can tap into us, our individual issues or problems.
You're probably gonna be surprised when I say that, but I get that question in all the other 5 counties. So
Yeah.
I just would like to say I think I'll be very visible. I have thoroughly enjoyed representing Seneca and Sandusky County. Of course, I'm the state rep there now, and I would challenge any elected official to say they haven't seen me.
Right.
So my only issue with this is there's 5 new counties, so I'm learning 5 new groups of county commissioners and have been all around the county. So I think that will be probably an easy part for me. I welcome the advocacy. I know people have reached out to me, and I enjoy that. I've met with Matt a lot, and just different people in the different counties. I would like to also say that the important part with being the state senator is that you have 3 state representatives also working with you. And while you might not have seen Senator Burke, he's been very visible to me from the standpoint of when I go with my 2 county issues to him, and we can discuss things and get things worked out. He's been totally supportive of what my mission has been for my 2 counties. So I would say that with the 7 counties, it is harder to be more visible when you look at some of the senators. There's 3 in one county in Columbus. Right. That it's more of a logistical issue, but I really believe that you will see more of me. I plan to be around. I really like doing this, so I'm trying to get some results. I also would like to say that I think one of my strengths has been up in my districts, has been aligning with the local officials to kind of have the same agendas. So, hey, we've got this opportunity for this. Are we ready to go? So the chamber, the economic development, the mayor, is everybody lined up with the same list of objectives. So so we can get it or do it, so to speak. So I think that that's the part that I'm kind of really looking forward to, kind of aligning all these different opportunities up in these different counties, and kind of really bringing the focus to this district.
Right. One of the for old timers, has-beens maybe in some respect, say like myself, the last 8 years has been quite a change. I had the opportunity in the 80s to be a county commissioner. Before that, I was city government for a while, as a city councilman, not to dismiss that, it's pretty important years. And then worked in state government. And then back to county government, and then into retirement before this job. So my point only is that I've been at different seats at the table. And it seems to me the past 8 years, and I want to be fair, we're through a 9th one now, we're all into the 10th one since the end of the Strickland year. But the relationship between local and state government has changed. And I think it's changed to the detriment of taxpayers. I think we're equals. I think we function best when we're all serving the public.
Correct.
And there has been, and it was mostly transitions within state government. And sort of the question becomes, is there anything that you can do in the Senate to turn back that clock?
Sure.
The fallacies is that mayors and commissioners are in alignment on everything, that we see things the same. It's just not the case. And so some key programs that, in my experience, were owned by local governments with more intensity, more passion, frankly more knowledge about the programs, were transferred to the commissioners for administration. And I would ask you, if you're successful in this effort, to take a look at whether or not that has improved service or has become more efficient for the people being served. When I'm talking about our block grant and housing programs. I'll make one more sentence in the speech. Housing's a neighborhood issue, and it really has very little to do with what goes on in the courthouse. And having been a commissioner for 8 years, I do understand what they're about, and it's not neighborhood revitalization. So that in the CDBG programs, maybe it's working better in your other counties, but that transition where cities lost their entitlement and now everything has to go through the counties, it's been a step backwards, and I really hope that with the DeWine administration and new General Assembly, that it'd be a possibility. So I guess the question is, have you heard that elsewhere, that the relationship between local governments and state governments has changed and it's not as good as it used to be?
Well, I guess the way I'd like to approach that is by saying about 10 years or so ago, the state government was in horrible shape.
Right.
So drastic measures had to be taken to get the state back in fiscal shape. And that took a lot away from the local governments, but it made the state whole. So which one, kind of is a composition of, but we got to have a good state going forward. Now that that's been in place, and I've only been there 5 years, not 5.5, but we're seeing a lot more of that come back to the local governments through what you mentioned, the CDBG grants, through local blocks of money. This last budget, we did a lot of money back through our mental health.
Right.
And through the mental health agencies to be able to help with the opioids, addiction issues, and mental health and recovery issues. So I think we've also done not only appropriating more money, and Governor DeWine's been very, very accessible on that, very concerned and caring about those issues. So a lot of us we vote on those budgets. The issue I want to make sure is we put some sustainability in there so that if business goes, we drop off again or have another recession, we just need to continue on. A couple other things that have happened in state government that I think are good, and maybe the public doesn't even know about them, but we've allowed for some government groups to be able to bind together to reduce their expenses and to be able to consolidate and help that way too. So it does make the money flowing more useful where you can make local decisions. I know the specific one that I've been working on in Seneca and Sandusky County is the wind turbine development. Right. And trying to bring that down to a local vote from the standpoint of our citizens have every right to know what's happening in our district. We do. We just should be able to have some kind of an opinion on that, and let's take a vote. And it's nothing against what they're doing. It's about the people being able to make those decisions. So I get really defensive and saying, how can you come up to my district and force those things down our throats? I mean, if we can do it in your district, then maybe we can do it up here. But why? Yeah. So I think and then there's other issues like there's a plastic bag tax that you have. It's really hard. Are we helping the community or are we hurting the community? And in that particular case, I think we got to keep business coming here because that's exactly where we're getting. The retail is how we raise our Seneca. That's how we raise our county sales taxes. That's right. That's how we get our funding. So. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, the specific one. So if you would please take a look at it. It's funny, the election be in November, and you already will be working on the next biennium.
Correct.
And then right away in January of 21, it'll become crazy time in that rush to the beginning of the new biennium. And we heard a lot in local government about, we know local government fund was changed, but allow us a year to adjust. I'm hoping that next biennium you'll look at that, because you're right, the coffers were pretty empty in state government. But you got billions of dollars now. And this is the thing, and I'm just making a quick speech, so kind of passionate about it, is that a lot, when you look at issues in Crawford County, intergovernmental issues, You've got the ambulance, doesn't really affect us, but you have the ambulance district that you can't spend much time here without hearing that. And you hear some resonating about the health department, although that's not quite as loud. I think most of the tension we have comes from local governments that have been dialed back on resources. To say starved, I don't look starved. We're not starved, but that lack of growth has, to a certain extent, pitted one local level of government, the townships, against the cities. What everybody wants in this particular case is affordable ambulance service. But when local government funds have been flatlined or reduced, it's made it real tough to do that. So I think state government's financial picture is pretty healthy. I think around this district you'll see a lot of local governments that have been are in need of resources. You probably know we worked our way out of fiscal emergency on that same scarcity diet, and I think it's been good for us. But I think the local government fund allocation, and that's really what Senator Burke and I had a little bit of a flashpoint about. He probably left thinking, well, that's smart Alec, I don't know what he knows, but it always was, the sales tax passed in the 30s was passed to bail out not only state government, but county government. And it's always been a joint proposition, so hopefully
Well, one of the things you mentioned,
Ohio Senate will be.
maybe before we started, was how important the local officials are too, from the standpoint
Right.
of being able to administer. And some of the responsibilities that the county commissioners have are huge, with being in charge of JFS and a lot of those other issues. So
Yeah.
you're very right.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna avoid the JFS stuff because it is such a difficult issue and probably doesn't lend itself time-wise, but that's a system that is by and large criticized but yet really poorly understood. So when the Republicans ran out of state government at the end of Bob Taft's administration, I was encouraged. I listened to advice that said go to county government, and then was able to be in charge of JFS for about 5 years. So there's a need for a lot of talent in that area, and sometimes they're criticized, but people don't understand much about the system.
Right.
That's kind of what I've found about it. Well, here's another system that's criticized, and we'll talk a minute or two about, and it's real important in this district. And you come from a family of 10 kids?
Yes.
Yeah, I imagine when you probably went to Catholic school.
Yes.
Yeah. How'd I know that? I only have 4 kids, so got special dispensation from the Pope maybe. But any event, large families. There are a number of communities in which Catholic education is really at the core of producing some of the more successful people in Seneca County. I think St. Wendlandt has closed its high school operation, correct?
Yes, it has. Mm-hmm.
And Calvert's limping along.
Calvert's still in business.
More power to them. I met some kids that went to Calvert from that area through college baseball. Some really cool kids, some really smart people. So here's the issue. I've been really trying to keep up on it, but it's really a moving target, is this issue of education choice. So in a nutshell, where does Bill Reineke come out on that? And I know there's the urban issues around education choice. There's charter schools, but I know in our smaller communities, it's I think it takes on a different dimension. So anything about ed choice?
Yeah, you're right. The ed choice is kind of the topic right now at the State House, and currently we passed an extension in the House, and we have our own version of what we would like that to look like, and it's currently in the Senate to come up with a compromise. Fundamentally, I think whether it's urban or a big city or rural, fundamentally we want our public schools to be able to survive. They have to be able to survive. We fund them heavily, and they're important to every community.
Right.
I think a couple noteworthy thoughts are that they probably are not being evaluated properly. So when we say a school is failing, it probably technically is not, but the way that we're grading it has come under big suspicion that we need to change that piece of the program, because then that in fact makes people want to jump to a different school, or if they have an opportunity to go to another choice. So probably the most important piece is making sure that we maintain the credibility and accurately judge our private or our public schools, because we need those in all of our communities. I know I was at your school here a couple weeks ago for a Rotary breakfast, and it's beautiful, and I understand the combining it and all that, but they take a lot of money, and then plus we're expecting a lot out of them as far as our students. We want them to come out well prepared for jobs. The other part of that is that there should be a choice, and I support education choice, but to what degree do we do that? We certainly don't want to jeopardize our public schools. So part of what we're trying to look at is reevaluating that criteria on how we judge the public schools, and then the second thing is how do we make education choice available for kids that go to other schools from an income standpoint. So whether it's it probably should go more income based versus the idea that the school is failing. So people get that mindset. All of us, and we really need it in this district, the Senate district. We need good school. We need people to believe our schools are good. They got to be good.
Right.
I mean, to believe that they're good, and some of the judgments, some of the criteria they use to grade them have not been what they should. So we're looking at getting rid of that, or I won't say the programming, but the way we evaluate them, and then also looking at the appropriate income level base for a voucher, so we keep both systems whole. The funding is a I feel like I have a good background in finance, but I just, the funding mechanism for the schools is just really, really complicated and complex.
Yeah, we'll agree to disagree on a couple things there. This is my concern. In the rural area, if depending on that percent of poverty that you're working on, my daughter-in-law testified 400%, and some of the Senate colleagues kind of smiled like that didn't have much of a chance. But I also know that the Toledo bishop said to our governor that 400% would be a good number. When you look at families today, 400% may seem a little bit high. But what I worry about with an education-driven one, let's say 200% of poverty, that it will become an urban set-aside, and that it won't be as applicable for working-class families. And I think one of the important things about families that I know that send their kids to, in this case, Catholic school, is they're almost always hardworking, almost always two-income families, and still have that quaint old idea that if I work real hard, that if daddy doesn't get there, then maybe the baby will. And so I hope that the vouchers, which cost not nearly as much as the per pupil expenditure at the school from a taxpayer's point of view, it's cheaper to send them to a voucher to a Catholic school. I'm gonna get in trouble here, Matt, I better stop this, as far as the taxpayer funded nature of it. But anyways, it seems to me that I don't want to see it become only a low income feature. That education choice, I really don't want to see that punishing families that work real hard. Now, you could certainly say 400%. You're punishing a pretty well-off family. So somewhere between that 200 and 400. The other thing, though, is real quickly, is failing schools. I was on a school board. Gosh, I want to say back in the late '90s, mid to late '90s, in the system, public education, complaining about the test then. So I'm not sure which criteria for grading performance will be acceptable to the American Federation of Teachers or the OEA. That's the other side of it, and it's a complicated issue, and the deliberation that the Senate and the House of Representatives have shown they're trying to get it right. I think that's absolutely laudable and the right thing. But my concern is that that you're going to put another get rid of another option that small towns and rural school districts have without the the private education that we're talking about now, mostly parochial school. You really have that, or you have homeschooling. So in urban areas, it seems like there's more choices. If you're in a school district, that you can make other choices. So,
I do not disagree with you. So I
Yeah.
think that will be kind of the see how the package comes back. I'd just like to throw something else out there too, that I've worked on the previous term, having served on the governor's task force for workforce. I've been alarmed to find out that our remediation rate in our schools is around 27%.
Yes.
So 10 years ago it was 33. So it really hasn't reduced. But I just think that we need to really look at the career tech piece and try to incorporate finding a purpose for these kids in school, so that when they come out, they have some kind of a credential, an apprenticeship, an internship, something that they can stair step for the future. And that's going to also try to keep some of our kids here too, just trying to find that purpose for them. So it's very complicated, it's very complex, and I know that that's one of the things I've been working on with workforce, just to try to keep our kids find that purpose, keep them employed locally, and keep them help them stay in Ohio.
well, let's hit one other issue on schools, and then I want to talk a little bit about development, because that's where they intersect. That we have people coming out of schools that are capable workers, or can go on to college and then become capable workers. A lot of concern about money flowing from public schools into private schools, into charter schools. The biggest issue that I see in Crawford County is open enrollment. And some of whether you like the non-performing, the failing schools and all of that or not, the criteria. If you just accept those, what you see are some of the schools that are chronically in a deficit in this county are schools that lose a lot of students to open enrollment. So I'm not quite sure how that all factors in, but we have one public school district that has a waiting list to get into kindergarten. So Galleon, get me in trouble, but that's okay. That's what this new media is about. I use the verb raids. There's one school district that raids the neighboring. They have a good reputation. They've earned that, I think. But that moves more money. When you talk about the financial impact, that moves more money in this case away from Bucyrus and Galleon school districts and into their neighboring school district than if half of the public school kids went to St. Joe's Galleon. It's just not even close. So there's a lot of concern about moving dollars around and districts benefiting from that and other districts losing. But anyways, it'd be interesting to see how open enrollment happens.
Well, and part of that would go,
or if that is changed.
yeah, and part of that would go back to how the school's rated and why they leave. And
Yeah.
if they're really not that underperforming as what people believe they are, then hopefully they won't be abandoning that. So,
Right.
so that's primarily the major focus of trying to refigure this whole thing and to change that whole structure of how they're graded.
Sure. Well, I don't want to retire myself, and I'm sure Representatives, soon to be hopes Senator Reineke doesn't either. So we will not talk about consolidation, but that becomes an issue at some point in time in Ohio. The number of districts and how we group those, and I think
And
that gets
actually,
into
we have
workforce.
actually we've got accessibility for that now. If schools want to do that, there are mechanisms in place. I know we did that in Bettsville and Old Fort, and there are mechanisms in place to allow for that if the residents want that.
Yeah, but those are two great school districts. They had great results. It was easy for them to merge and see the benefit of it. It's where you have
Local control.
Yeah, there you go. You're right about that, Bill. Hey, let's talk about one other thing. You're talking about workforce that I think is important, and I think and we feel it this way. We're still trying to figure out our role in this, but any overall feelings about the change that took place now 9 years ago with the division of the Department of Development and the creation of Jobs Ohio. I'll tell you what we feel like, that the farther you are away from Toledo, the more difficult it is to get the attention of the regional Jobs Ohio entity. And so I'm not sure if you see that in Seneca and in Sandusky County as it relates to Lucas, but I know this far away, another representative district away from Toledo, it seems like we're a little bit off the beaten path. So I'm not sure what your initial feelings are about Jobs Ohio. I know some of the communities in Seneca County have been able to get projects, but
I'm very familiar with it. I personally like the concept from the standpoint of the way they do it, and I think one of the things that's very important, and I don't think a lot of people understand, but it's got to be confidential. I mean, it can't. It's not. I mean, because of these businesses coming in and applying and disclosing trade secrets, disclosing financial information, it does need to be somewhat, kind of a closed deal. I know I've met with Gary before, and I think your workforce development here is right on track with the significant things that we look around the state for. You've got the right school system set up and how you're trying to get kids into the workforce and those kinds of things. How they individually prioritize each project, I just don't know that I have any words of wisdom on that, other than I think you just have to do the best job you can. I do think that there are, they like to have their site patterns ready to go, and I know there's criteria, and of course I'm not representing this area yet, so I don't have all of the important information, but I would think that'd be one of the strong things that I'd be able to help with and try to encourage.
Yeah, I think if you can help us communicate better to those officials.
I've been impressed with what I've seen here so far with Gary and your economic development.
Well, I appreciate that. But that is, again, tracks back to the first question about visibility and not having as strong a partnership with the state representatives and in your case state senators, because it is important. You can't call the state senator every time you have a project or you need a little help with Jobs Ohio, but it's important to have that connection, frankly, often with staff. The elected officials are darn busy most of the time, but staff that knows the people in the local community, and when we're talking about one specific industrial site or another, your staff being aware of that would be real helpful.
I think one of the things that's maybe different is that my people up there will, what are you calling us for? Well, I've heard about this opportunity. Would you guys want to consider it? And they're like, this is supposed to work the other way,
Right.
So I think that's the part I'm most looking forward to.
Right. The last thing I want to say on development, and we can hit on a couple more topics, and it's been real. Anybody who watches this is going to learn so much about you from doing this that I think I feel good about the time we've spent.
Thank you.
State government, all of us, gas taxpayers, helped build a new transportation link through here about a decade ago, Route 30. And in the whole transition away from Department of Development into Jobs Ohio, I think that almost $500 million worth of investment in Route 30, kind of from border to border, was lost as those boundaries of Jobs Ohio service areas. So as next year happens, I think expect to hear more about from Lima to Canton, heck, from Canton to Fort Wayne is a really underdeveloped corridor where there's a lot of transportation opportunity and
got a good speed limit.
There's good speed limit and a lot of open areas that we can develop, that we can do more industrial development on. So,
and that is a good positive thing, because some of my district doesn't have any 4-lane highway, and that comes right through here. So we should be able to, the structure's there, so that should be very good for us to work with in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. What else about campaign or candidacy did you want to share? Anything you can think of?
I just feel strongly that I identify with the district from the standpoint of having been raised in Foster and have grown up in Seneca County, and look forward to having our family businesses move forward with our companies. Like you already mentioned, I'm from a large family.
Right.
I understand that.
That's a positive thing.
Yeah.
I wasn't
love
making
I
fun of it
wouldn't-
in any way.
well,
I was like,
wouldn't
it's a lot to
change
be
any of
proud
it.
of. Yeah.
I was fortunate, had great parents, and
Yeah.
have about 450 employees throughout our company, so I get both sides of the paycheck thing, and I
Yes.
just feel really strongly about that. That's those are the main things that I should have moving forward. Getting into this was about trying to identify projects to make things move, and so we can be here for a long time.
Yeah, that's great, Bill. I think I've learned more in this half hour or so of conversation than I have in the half a dozen flyers and the news, the news articles and or the commercials. And you know, for me, I was almost said my money. This doesn't cost us anything but time. But for our benefit, I think this kind of interaction, getting to know candidates and what they're about, is really preferable. I'm really glad that you made the time to come down here. Sometimes you're swimming through a lot of the noise, and it's good to really get to know the person and have a chance to hear you speak in your own voice and share your ideas. And we've, I think today, done a great job of that.
Thank you.
I'm really glad I got a chance to
Yeah,
meet you
thank
today,
you. I
Bill.
appreciate being here.
Absolutely.
Thank
My
you, sir.
pleasure. Best of luck here in a
Thank you.
couple weeks. Okay.